In the previous lectures, we learned a lot about timelines. Now you know how to use this very powerful feature of Unreal Engine for your purposes. Now we will broaden your knowledge on how to build logic using branches. Branches operate using the same principle as if and else in the major programming languages. So basically, the branch node has two output execution pins. It can be either true or false. Whether the output is true or false depends on this condition input pin. It requires a connection wire coming from a Boolean. Now, what are Booleans? Booleans in programming languages serve as the fundamental building blocks for logical expressions, enabling decision-making within code. Named after mathematician George Boole, Boolean data types represent true or false values, denoted typically as true or false in most languages. They are essential for control flow structures like conditionals and loops, determining the execution path based on whether conditions evaluate to true or false. Booleans facilitate comparisons, logical operations, and Boolean algebra, playing a crucial role in making programs dynamic and responsive to various scenarios. You can simply view a Boolean as an electric power switch of a lamp. If switch is on, the electricity flows to the lamp and it lights up. If the switch is off, electricity doesn't flow and the lamp remains off. In Unreal Engine, Boolean is a variable that we can declare based on the goals we want to achieve. In this lecture, I will teach you how to create Boolean variable and how to use it to allow reverse movement of the wall to bridge blueprint we've been working on. Basically, what I'm saying is that in this lecture, we will build logic for this wall to bridge blueprint that allows our player character to return to the starting point of the level. Let's begin. Please open the event graph of your wall to bridge blueprint. First, we need to create a Boolean variable. It can be done by clicking on this plus sign. It is a common practice to give Booleans a name that actually asks a question. In our case, we can name this Boolean is at end location with a question mark. So we sort of ask a question, is our wall to a bridge blueprint at its end location? You also need to make sure that you're working with a Boolean type of variable. As you can see, it says Boolean on my screen. If it says anything else on your screen, please click on it and choose Boolean as the type of variable. Awesome. We've created our first Boolean. Now, let's think of the logic we are building. So, if it's the first time our player overlaps the invisible trigger component of this blueprint, the wall needs to tilt into a bridge, and then it needs to carry our player to the finish line. Once the bridge reaches its end location, it needs to know that it is at its endpoint. We can do this by setting the Boolean we just created to true. Now drag the Boolean and release it somewhere in this location. Once you release it, a context menu with two options will pop up. It asks you whether you want to get or set the Boolean. In our case, we need to set the Boolean, so click on Set. Let's position everything appropriately. Now we need to drag from the finished execution pin of our hover timeline and plug it into the set Boolean. I will add these rewrote pins so everything looks tidy. We also need to tick this option so it is set to true. Now, let's analyze. Basically, what we did here is that we told Unreal Engine that once this hover timeline finishes execution, it should set the value of the is@end-location Boolean to true. Let's position our editor graph so that we can see the initial part of this event. Okay, now we can create a branch that will decide which direction should our wall to bridge blueprint carry our player character. The branch needs to be placed right in the initial part of our custom event. Right-click somewhere on an empty space of the event graph. Search for branch. To quickly add a branch, you could also hold B key on your keyboard and click somewhere on the empty space in the event graph. Hook up everything the way I do it. The execution pin true should go to the reverse from end input pin of the second timeline. This one. Now let's tidy everything up. Now we need to add a condition to our branch. Simply drag and drop is at end location boolean onto the condition input pin of the branch. Let's analyze. So once the player character overlaps the invisible trigger component, make it a bridge custom event fires. Based on this condition, the branch will decide what to do next. Since this boolean is false at the moment, the false execution pin will fire. It is false because by default, when we create a boolean, its value is false. Then everything will proceed normally, the way we built it to behave in the previous lectures. Namely, the wall will tilt into a bridge and carry our player character over to the finish line. Let's move the event graph so that we can see the ending of this event. So once the second timeline finishes execution, this finished execution pin will fire, resulting in setting of this is at end location boolean to true. Let's return to the initial phase of this event. Now, when the boolean is at end location is set to true, the branch will fire from the true execution pin. Let's navigate to where the connection wire coming from the true execution pin of the branch goes. It goes into the input pin reversed from end of the hover timeline. This will make this second timeline play from end to start. Thus, the bridge will now carry our player character to the initial part of the level. That's exactly what we wanted to achieve. However, our plan won't work out because of a minor issue that we need to fix. Namely, we need to attach the invisible trigger component to the wall static mesh component. Otherwise, the invisible trigger won't travel together with the wall static mesh, since these two nodes only affect the wall, not the invisible trigger. If we attach the invisible trigger to the wall, they will travel together. To attach a component to another component, simply drag it over one another, like this. See, now the invisible trigger component is attached to the wall static mesh component. We can test it now. Let's first compile the blueprint and then hit the play button. Let's keep our fingers crossed. The initial phase works like a charm. Now the question is, will this bridge carry us over to the beginning of the level? It does carry us over. Congratulations. At the moment, we won't be able to reuse the bridge to get to the finish line again. In the next lecture, we will deal with that, so don't worry. I sincerely hope you understood how branches and booleans work and how we can use them to our advantage. If you didn't understand something, please reach me out in the QA section of this course. Otherwise, please carry on. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next lecture.